Hey everyone, Cody Menz here with another video looking into an upcoming tank, or if you're watching this, maybe release tank, the TS-60, which is a Tier 9 American tank destroyer. Currently it's listed as a reward tank for World of Tanks PC. From my understanding, it's out on World of Tanks Blitz or console at this point. I forget which one. More or less though, as of essentially end of summer here in 2023, it's kind of hanging around in a game client, and it's due to be released at some point. Being labeled as a reward tank doesn't specifically mean it's going to be one. It could be changed into a premium, but it does kind of point towards this potentially being essentially, battle pass reward tank for 2024, which I think might be likely given, the stats of this thing, unless they end up tweaking it a little bit. But it could also become a premium tank, in some loot box event or something at some point as well. Now, this tank, a little bit weird, to me it closely resembles the FV215B for Britain, just, with the rear turret design and everything. But it's definitely kind of quirky, I feel like, for a Tier 9 tank destroyer. The historical reference that they have in for this thing, who knows how true this is, but essentially it's saying in the early 1950s, the American military start working on a series of promising armored vehicle projects, and tank destroyer development stopped in 1946. However, in the 50s, there are vehicles that look like assault SPGs, created to destroy specifically tanks, and the TS-60 was one of them. The vehicle had unusual configuration, engine compartment was in the middle of the hull, and the turret was placed in the rear. And by the late 1950s, essentially missiles took over, and they canceled any tank designs like this because they didn't need them anymore. Who knows how true that is, or if Wargaming, plugs some stuff into a chatbot or something and spit it out. In any event, this tank, should we be excited for it? And, like, if we see it, is it going to be something that is worth, picking up? Now, just disclaimer, I personally hate rear turreted tanks, so I'm a little bit biased. Now, for the sake of this video, I just stuck with some Tier 9 TDs as far as comparing this to, where this tank might, I guess, be compared a little bit better to like a Tier 9 heavy tank, like rear turreted, to be completely honest, because the gun in typical American tank destroyer fashion is not really like a tank destroyer, outside of like the 750 damage guns on the T30 and the T95. This 400 damage one is a little weird. So your standard round doesn't really have good pen, 258. And then your premium pen 320 is better, but not super great. And your shell velocity is a little slow at 950 for the heat. Now, it's kind of strange because, like, stacking up against some other Tier 9 TDs here, I just threw in a little bit of, the tanks I feel like might closely resemble this, but it's still a little bit of a stretch for some. You're definitely lacking alpha compared to, say, everything except for a tortoise here. And then even penetration, like, you're a bit low, again, except for the tortoise. So it definitely has a non-TD gun for a tank destroyer. You do have a pretty good turret angle on this, which is nice. It makes it not feel as much, I guess, like a tank destroyer than you might for a non-turreted type of TD. So kind of similar to like the T30 in that, not that this turret goes all the way around, but you're not limited to like the casemate design. Gun depression, not great. 7 degrees though for something with a rear turret isn't too bad though. Kind of like when you're playing the Hovre 1, it doesn't feel too awful trying to poke over the front of the tank, which is definitely good. Good to see that. Your aiming time is practically non-existent, same as the tortoise is for your base value. Now the kicker here is your accuracy sucks. Even compared to, tanks that have a lot higher alpha than you, the accuracy is 0.4 for the base value. Unless they change it, like, this thing is not going to be sniping, and it's going to be hard, I feel like, to hit shots because you have that somewhat lower penetration, albeit 258 is still workable. It's just not I guess, the norm for a tank destroyer, and it's not like the Tortoise where you have 0.3 accuracy to go along with that lower pen. Now, the one nice thing is its DPM is pretty good. It's similar to the Tortoise here, and that a Tortoise beats it out by almost 200 DPM for the base value, but it does have a really high damage per minute value, which is nice. A little bit of a, saving grace here for that tank. Now, armor-wise, getting into that, so first of all, hit points, pretty low for a tank destroyer. Yeah, it's definitely odd to see how low it is, considering getting into the armor here, like, it's not awful, but I wouldn't really consider it, I guess, super duper good. Now, this armor mod is not 100%, accurate, but it provides like a decent picture here. Now, this is against 300 millimeters of pen. Lower glacis, not too good. It might protect you against some lower tiers, but it's not going to win any awards. You do have some little holes in the armor, like around the gun and above the, essentially the gun here, like your armor is 40 millimeters where you can get hit on parts of your roof, which is something, definitely watch out, especially at higher tiers, getting overmatched with that 40 millimeter roof. And your cupola is weak, typical American tank. Now, when you angle this tank a bit, this is where you do have like this little bulge, here, that people are going to be able to hit, and your sides become pretty darn weak, and your lower glacis doesn't even get, to a respectable level. So that's where, even though this thing has a little bit of armor, it's going to be a bit tough to side scrape. It's more of a, hopefully you don't show too much and you can poke around and take a shot and get back in. But I don't think your armor is going to hold up too well against higher tiers. So getting past that, armor, it has some, but I don't think it's a huge selling point compared to, like, I think the Tortoise honestly has better armor. Hovry's armor is a bit more usable. It's kind of like a Yag Tiger, to where if your armor works, great, but you're not expecting it because everyone's going to chuck heat at you anyway. Getting to the mobility here, so the thing is, is definitely light. It's not a very heavy tank destroyer, but the speed unfortunately kind of holds it back a little bit, so you don't have a super high top speed. It's not awful given that it's a TD, but 35 kilometers an hour forward and 12 backwards is definitely, for something that's light, you kind of wish that you had more, but it kind of fits the trend for a lot of American tanks, whether it's heavies and stuff, where it seems like their top speeds, there's nothing too extravagant about them, Traverse speed, nothing to see here. It's not great. It's not bad. Camo, not great. Your view range isn't the best, but it's also obviously not the worst. So it's one of these tanks to where, currently being labeled as a reward tank, I think most likely we'll see this as, basically a battle pass reward tank going into 2024. Usually they release 2 tier 9s, usually one that's pretty good and one that's, it's just kind of okay but unique, kind of like the TS-60 here. So I think this is the most likely case for that, but Wargaming, if they do give it some buffs and change the stats, I feel like, they could turn it into a premium tank and kind of like a selling feature, whether it's for holiday ops boxes or, potentially another event that they do between, now and next year. Anyway, though, the TS-60, I think it'll be pretty interesting to where, it's not a tank that I personally am going to love, because I don't like tanks with rear turrets on the back, just with how the game plays, but it is quirky and it is going to be different, than what we currently have in the game. Because there's not really, I guess, like another super good fit for a tier 9 TD, I feel like, to compare this tank to. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Maybe it piqued your, curiosity a little bit for upcoming tanks, and hopefully we'll see this tank at some point in the near future and it doesn't get sit in the files forever. Thank you. Have a good one. See you in the next video.